agents out there, welcome back. We're doing it live. It's Dave DuFord here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. We're doing a live training here today on the numbers behind selling final expense insurance. This video is specifically designed for those of you out there who are interested in selling final expense successfully. Maybe you're an aspiring agent who's working on getting your license and about to jump into the final expense side of the business, or perhaps you already got your license and you're intrigued by the final expense business and want to know more of the numbers behind it. Either way, you found the right video, because the purpose of this is to give you all of the information to empower you to decide about whether or not this business is a truly good fit for you, and to get the numbers behind it entirely. So what we're going to be working through specifically today is talking about numbers related to revenue, like commissions, how commissions are determined, numbers related to expenses, what the driving factors for expenses are in the final expense business, what net income looks like realistically for a new agent, what to expect as far as what the better agents make in this business. We'll also, along the way, make some comparisons to both final expense face-to-face sales and telesales in this journey we're about to go on. Of course, a lot of it's kind of the same, some differences, of course. We'll talk about activity as well, what kind of numbers are necessary to be successful from an activity standpoint. And then we'll conclude talking about some what-if conditionals if you improve your skill set, or you learn how to cross-sell or add more average case size to each of your sales. There's a multitude of ways to improve your outcomes in this business, and we're going to talk more about that as well. A reminder for those of you who are interested, we are hosting our Elite Agent Summit events coming up in Atlanta on August 26, 2022, and in Dallas, September 23rd, 2022. Go to eliteagentsummit.com for more details. Put in EAS50 at the coupon discount. To get a discount to a ticket price of $49. It's actually pretty affordable. We're making it that way. So, all right, let's get started. So we're going to first start talking about the final expense business and the numbers around revenue, okay? So I want you to simplify the complexity of this business. All a business is the money that comes in minus the money that it's required to generate that business, and then what you're left with is what's in your bank account, okay? So revenue minus expenses equals your income. That's really what this business is about. It's all business is about, and that's really what final expense is about. So let's dive in based on that standpoint to talk about revenue. So first of all, revenue can be otherwise known as commissions, okay? So if you've seen promotional ads for final expense, or you've seen social media posts out there, you'll say, I made $5,000 today. I made $10,000 today. Sometimes you'll see it 5,000 AP or 10,000 AP. You'll see AP. That's annual premium. More on that in a little while. That references essentially the size or the case size the client or the agent wrote. It doesn't necessarily mean, though, what the agent had put in his or her bank accounts, because there's always a cost associated with acquiring that revenue. More on that, of course, in the expense section. But the point is that commissions are your top line revenue, okay, before expenses. And the way that we derive your commission level is based off of a percentage of what's known as the annual premium. Hey, Mark, thanks for being here. So what is the annual premium? The annual premium can be thought of as the totality of premiums you pay for an insurance policy in 1 year, in this case, final expense. In other words, if I pay $1,000 into a final expense plan in the year 2022, or in the first 12 months of the policy, more accurately, then that is a $1,000 annual premium. And then from there, we take the percentage commission that we have been assigned based off of the product. There's a lot of variables that we'll talk about that in a minute, and multiply that, and the outcome is what our revenue is in the final expense space. So if I'm paid 100% and I multiply that by 1,000 annual premium, then the dollars I get in revenue equate to 1,000 times 100%, $1,000. Does that make sense? So a couple of things to cover here. Number one, what's a good commission level, right? I mentioned 100%, but is that good? Is that bad? Well, that's where things kind of get complicated. In short, your commission level reflects the kind of operation that the final expense agency kind of focuses on. So, for example, there are agencies out there, I can think of a couple, Senior Life Services, North Star Insurance Advisors, where the commission is lower than 100%. It might be 40% to 50% of the annual premium. But there's no acquisition cost to acquire those leads. In other words, you're not putting out any money for buying leads. You're just getting straight the commissions from your sale. So in this case, revenue equates to your net income. There are other business models like what I do at DeFord Insurance Group, where we teach agents to not have a job where they just work leads that are provided for them and take a lower commission, but to instead run a business where they do invest in leads. There's definitely a risk factor, but higher risk, typically we want an arrangement where that leads to higher reward. And in many cases, when you compare a low commission opportunity with free leads to a high commission opportunity with paid leads, the outcome, the net income, when you compare them, is much better for a good agent, all else equal. So it's going to depend upon the organization that you join and kind of what their culture is or what their business model is. And you've got to decide, again, this is part of that due diligence process I talk to new agents about. You got to do your research and kind of figure out what business model best suits your personality type and what you're looking to do. Are you just looking to do work and not so much care about running a business? Maybe a free lead program with a lower commission makes sense, that kind of thing. Another factor, of course, is not so much just the agency business model, but also what kind of product you're writing, okay? So guaranteed issue is a type of product that asks no health questions that historically pay much less than a policy that provides first day full coverage but asks health questions. Why? Because the mortality risk is higher for a person who is sickly, or in other words, they're likely to die faster than someone who isn't. So the guaranteed issue carriers typically charge more to offset anticipated higher mortality rates, meaning they'll collect less premiums over time from those people, so it pays less commission. Also, age is a factor as well. The older you are at certain age bands, like over 80 especially, typically most carriers cut commissions because, at some point you're in your 80s, there's a higher likelihood of dying. You're really close to the end of your life versus the beginning, and the companies just lower commission as a way to control for costs, and just stuff like that. Okay. There's other things like some carriers won't pay a commission on the policy fee. There's a couple of carriers out there that when you calculate your commission, they take out that $30, $40, $50 policy fee. They don't pay you on that, even though they collect that. So it's a way to kind of do some window dressing. It makes your commission actually, in some cases, generally 10% lower than what it appears to be. So again, there's stuff like that matters. Little tiny details, fine details. But the big thing really is going to be, what do you want out of the business? Do you want it as a business? Do you want it as a job? And what are you getting in exchange for that commission? And nothing makes a bigger difference than doing your due diligence and interviewing with multiple agencies to better frame in your mind what you want out of the business and what matters to you. So that's kind of where I would decide upon it. Now, so that's revenue. And we're going to look at activity and kind of put all this together as far as anticipated activity, face-to-face over the phone to derive a sale. So we'll talk about that in a minute. If you guys are interested in that, just sit tight. Now, let's talk about cash flow. So as a part of revenue, you have to know the speed at which you get paid, okay? My dad was in a chemical business selling to corporate America, and corporate America typically pays 90 days net. So you would have to deliver product to them and then wait 3 months till you actually got paid on that product. So they had a float period where they weren't responsible for paying you. And if you run a small business and cash flow is tight, that's a tough thing. Why is it tough? Because you're making and putting money into your product that you spent your money on, most likely as a small business, but have to wait 3 months to profit from it to cover those costs and profit. So dad had to sell a bunch of furniture in order to keep his business up and running, and thankfully made out, but it was pretty bad there in the beginning. So the point is, cash flow is king, okay? If you want to run a successful business, focus on getting paid faster is really kind of general rule of thumb. Now, in the insurance business, the way that we calculate cash flow is that either products and final expense are going to pay on issue or pay on first draft. So let me describe the difference. First of all, in the final expense business, this is a buy now, pay later business. You're going to sell a person a policy and likely not collect money up front. Why is that the case? Because our clients are typically on a fixed income. Asking them to come up with $50, $100 on the spot, unexpected, midstream before their next check hits, is sometimes difficult, and it can prevent a sale from happening. I listened to a sales call from an agent yesterday on the phone. She literally rebutted 20 times, and it wasn't until she said, oh, well, I don't have to get the money up front for you. We can just do it later. She was like, oh, okay, that's fine. Like, literally, that was the main objection to the whole thing. So timing of when you take the money really matters. And if you're paid on issue, even if the premium hasn't been collected yet, after the policy is approved a couple of days later and issued, you then get paid. So it turns the cash flow turnaround time is days when you're set up with carriers on issue. Where it's on setup as first draft, it's after that first premium's collected. Like if I wrote a deal today, Mildred wasn't paid till the 3rd, we took her money on the 3rd, I probably wouldn't get paid till the following week, like in the 5th to the 7th, right? So it's a slower pay on first draft. The vast majority of carriers these days pay on issue. Okay, so you're going to see most of your carriers paying fast versus slow, and that helps a ton with us because most of us have to put money out ahead of time to pay our lead bills, right? So we want that cash flow to be realized faster so we can continue to reinvest back in the leads, not to mention pay our bills. So make sure you consider the carriers you have and the speed at which they pay commissions. Again, most these days pay on issue. Also, another factor of the payout on advance commission is the definition of advance. So an advance is a percentage of the premium or commission you're going to earn up front. So like in our example earlier, if you had $1,000 annual premium at 100% commission, the total payout for the year is $1,000, cold hard cash, right? But you don't get all that up front. Why? Because the payment is being made monthly, not yearly. And your definition of earning that commission is based off of when the premium is realized and collected by the company. So you're only getting monthly premiums. And so what the carriers institute now is an advance with the assumption they're going to receive future premiums. That advance is worth 75% of the total commission payout you're going to get. So for example, if your $1,000 payout, it's $1,000, you're going to get 75% of that in most cases. So you're going to get paid $750, again, on issue a couple of days after the policy's been approved, generally speaking. That other $250 is going to formulate over the months 10, 11, 12 of the first year as the monthly premium is collected. So you'll get it dispensed to you after it's collected on draft, okay? So you do have to take that into factor. You're not going to get that full upfront money. You're going to get a factor of it, typically 75%. To a lesser extent, some of these carriers have advance caps, okay? So maybe you won't get any higher than a $1,500 advance. Maybe you write a $500 a month deal, you just crush it. But because the carriers have advance caps, you only see a percentage of that advance. Then once that advance is cleared with premium payments, you'll start to get paid each month the client pays. That does sometimes happen on larger cases. Some of these guaranteed issue carriers have advance caps of $500, $600, that kind of thing. So understand there's some variations here, but most carriers are going to pay you 75% advance. And for the most part, in most cases, you're going to see that full 75% advance. Usually you don't get super huge policies like that all the time, so it's not nearly as big of an issue. The other side of to an advance is what happens if the client stops paying. We call that in this business, and this would be kind of a recaptured revenue. That's how I talk about it in financial terms. We call these chargebacks, right? So not everybody that commits and buys and even pays a little bit is going to commit entirely forever. And if the lapse of the policy, which means the policy cancels, occurs within that advance period, you owe back a portion of the money that was paid in. May seem unfair, but understand that advance is a loan, and the policy is the collateral. And without a collateral on the books, your advance is basically unsecured. So what happens is you don't have to pay back that advance right away. If you're a productive agent writing every week, you'll typically write new business to cover that advance, and you'll be squared away just by the natural progression of writing new business as time progresses. If you don't write new business, you'll have to send in a check. It's rare that you have to do that if you're consistent in this business. But chargebacks are a reality. How much are chargebacks, or what percentage of your business are chargebacks? If you write well, in the sense of having access to multiple carriers if you're a broker, and if you sell the right way, meaning not pressure, you want to help the client, but you're not aggressively and selfishly closing them, then you'll likely keep 80 to 85% of your book of business that you write. That's good. If you sell one product, if you're captive, or you sell overpriced products unnecessarily, or if you're a pushy salesperson, expect that chargeback ratio to be higher, you to keep less of your business, and you to have more financial issues. There is an agent that I had that did exactly this in the Southeast. Got word from him end of last year that he was aggressively pushing people into policies, kind of a rogue agent, if you will. And half of his business was lapsed. I mean, he was just not doing really good things. His license is gone now, thank goodness. But the point is that if you sell wrong, look, you can convince anybody to buy. Some people, if you're too pushy, they'll just buy to get rid of you. And then when you're gone, they just call and cancel. You know, so you can't sell with this like used car salesman mentality. Like, you're on the hook for 9 months and they better pay, or you're going to have to pay some percentage of it back. Okay. So chargebacks matter, but a lot of that can be mitigated and controlled by how you sell and what products you sell, making sure you have a diversity of product selection. So again, if you guys are on here, if you've enjoyed this so far, please consider hitting the like button. That helps the YouTube algorithm spread this content further. And if you guys got questions in this process, whether you're watching this live or the recording of this, throw them in the chat. Happy to help you. All right, now moving on. So that's basically revenue. We talked about how to derive our commission, the speed at which we get commission, and considering things like the agency we're with, the type of products we're selling, and certainly what percentage of our book stays on the books. All of this is very important. The next step is to consider expenses. And in a final expense sales model, face-to-face or telesales, at the end of the day, this is a direct sales business. One of the benefits of selling final expense is you don't have employees. You don't have to worry about holding product, right? You don't have to invest your money in working capital, right? You don't have to have ingredients ahead of time before you sell what it is that you're selling. You don't have really any kind of serious investment of money like in products or materials to create your insurance policy. The outlay in this business, 95% of it is going to be what? Your investment in leads, assuming you're in an agency that requires you to invest in leads. I would say somewhere around 95% of your total expense budget is going to be dedicated exclusively to buying and investing into leads to give you opportunities to sell insurance. Now, what about that other 5% if you're curious? Licensing cost, non-resident licensing renewals, errors and omissions, continuing education, home office setup. Maybe you got to buy a computer or something like that, a headset, that kind of stuff. But again, it pales in comparison to the entirety of what your lead costs are going to be as a percentage of your expenses. A side note here, Aubrey, how much of your final expense turns into guaranteed issue? Great question. I'm glad you addressed that. That does matter. Maybe about 1 out of 4. Sometimes it's less than that. Sometimes it's a little bit more than that. I'm worried when an agent's writing more than 1 out of 3 of their cases as guaranteed issue. Usually not doing a good job underwriting if that's the case. Or they're prospecting the local morgue, In most cases, it's 1 out of 4 or less as a percentage of their total book of business. So it's not a big drag total on the commission basis. Good question. Okay. So how much should you invest in leads? Well, the cool thing about final expense is it is a scale-based business. We'll talk about ROI numbers here in a minute, but it tends to be if you provide more work, you keep up with the work requirement, you keep up with the effort with getting out there and seeing the people. If you do all the basics of what we teach on activity, then typically the outcome on your net income scales commensurately, equally. So the more that you do, the more that you make at the same ratio that you would have had at less activity, now with more activity, if that makes sense. So what should you invest in, or what's the numbers per week? A good number to start with, typically, on a full-time basis in final expense, telesales or face-to-face is $500 to $1,000 a week. Typically, it's going to be somewhere in the middle there. And over time, many of those agents who get success will scale and invest even more. Sometimes $1,000 a week, $1,500 a week, maybe even $2,000 a week if you love to work. Do you have to do that out the gate? No. You can comfortably start getting enough of the right kind of leads at the right rate with a budget range between $500 to $1,000 a week as a full-time agent. If you're part-time, we at DeFord Insurance Group accept both part-time, full-time, as well as telesales and face-to-face final expense agents. You're generally looking at in the approximate range of $500, give or take, depending on the type of leads that you get. Again, there's all different sorts of options, at least the way we look at it at my agency: direct mail, predominantly for face-to-face, Facebook digital leads for telesales or face-to-face, live transfers off of TV leads, generally for telesales. They all kind of fall within that range. And but you need to have enough, and that's kind of key here. One of the biggest problems I see agents who are new in this business that don't have the proper guidance is they don't buy enough leads, or they think, oh, I'll start with $100 or $200, and that should be enough to test this business. That's not. The sales is a numbers game. Yeah, you got to know how to sell and what to sell and have some skills. But if you don't have the requisite amount of people to talk to through the process of purchasing leads, you don't have the numbers on your side, and you're not giving yourself a fair shake going out there to execute your sales and marketing final expense system. So that's why I say, look, you got to do it the right way. You can't, just dip your toe in the water a little bit and then make a decision. You got to expose yourself fully with the right amount of weekly investment to give yourself an honest shot. Okay, and again, $500 to $1,000 full-time, $400 to $500 approximately for part-time. As far as the business of determining like how much of your money should bring back revenue. In other words, for every dollar in marketing, you should be considering this. For every dollar in marketing that you put into your lead system, how much revenue should I receive? This is ultimately the most important metric in our business. You have to kind of think of our business like a multiplication machine. We're putting $1 into an ATM, and the goal is hopefully to get more dollars back than what we put in, right? And we want to do this as many times as possible, right? That's how we make a living in final expense. What I like to say is about, at most, no more than 35% of your revenue should be accounted towards expenses. In other words, if I do $100,000 in revenue in final expense, I don't want to pay more than $33,000 for that revenue. What I find is if it starts to trend more than that, like if I have to pay $50,000 for $100,000 in revenue for a $50,000 net income, it's likely that I'm lazy, I'm not working hard enough, I'm not doing and working in the most effective and efficient manner possible, and that likely leads to even greater problems where that ratio decreases even more. So in other words, our target ROI, return on investment, is really the way to look at this. For every dollar you put into this system, what I like to see is $3 to $4 return back on first year total commission. In other words, if I put $50,000 into the final expense machine, I want to see $200,000 or $150,000 to $200,000 in revenue and a net income after expenses of $100,000 to $150,000, and that would be before taxes. That is how I would justify the system on a face-to-face or telesales basis. Ratio, could it be higher than that? Sure. But the beautiful thing about final expenses, even with a 3-to-1 ratio, if you're taking $50,000 to write $150,000, if you want to double your income, you just double your investment. You go to $100,000. Yeah, you got to double your activity too, but instead of $150,000, your ratios typically stay the same, and you also now have gone up to $300,000 in revenue, and you extract or subtract $100,000. Now you end up with a $200,000 revenue. Pretty cool. So that's what makes final expense good. You end up figuring out what your numbers are. You maximize what you can on a skill set basis to improve those numbers, and then from there it's a factor of scale. You just scale your activity as high as you can, so that that net income number scales commensurately. A couple of questions in the chat. Let's hit them up. Thanks for being here, guys. Brad, what's up? How does an agency owner make money from agents he or she recruits? Perfect question. So real quick, that's what I do. That's how I make my living now. So what I do is, let me give you an example. Let's say, and this isn't exactly true for my business, just for the sake of math. Let's say you're at 100% commission. I've got 100 agents at 100% commission. I'm at 110% commission. The difference between your and my commission is 10%. But I've got 100 agents that difference is on. The total production of 100 agents is $100,000. I make the difference between you and mine commission, your commission and everybody else's commission, multiplied by the total production. So in this case, if $100,000 in production was produced and I have a commission of 10%, 10% of $100,000 is what? $10,000. So you make what's called an override based off of what the agent's commission is. It's a nice thing because, yes, it's less overall commission, but also I kind of diversify my efforts because it's not just me that has to go out there and work. It's a bunch of different agents that go out there and work. And as long as you got a lot of agents working, you'll probably make some money, right? So it's a great business model to scale, not so much on the sales side, but on the growth side with more people doing what you have helped them to duplicate from you. Does that make sense? And of course, I love the business. I think it's great. It's definitely not for everybody. Some accuse agency building like it's the adult babysitting business. It hasn't been that way for me because I recruit good people that are self-sufficient. But for some, it's like that. How long after the sale? Hey, Alicio, how you doing? Nice to see you again. How long after the sale can you contact an FE client to sell Medicare without scope of appointment if they've been your final expense client? I mean, if they're your client, you have an existing relationship, so you should be able to do it right away. Now, if you're doing it on a lead, they would have to initiate the conversation and ask about Medicare and then sign a scope of appointment. If you're on a Medicare appointment and you get a scope signed, you can't sell them final expense. You have to go back on another appointment, but there's no guidance to the length of time that has to pass. So maybe it's another appointment in 10, 15 minutes, right? Hey, Cat Daddy, do you think that prospects who only pay by Direct Express, Green Dot, Metabank, Brinks are worth the trouble, or do you discard them? I always, if they don't have a checking account, I always took them, but I know plenty of agents that won't. I talked to Prosperity Life is one of the big carriers we do a lot of business with. They advance full commissions on Direct Express, and the way that he was describing it to me was the percentage persistency is pretty close to checking accounts, because they draft it the right way. And the fact that a carrier will advance commissions on Direct Express tells me that it's a safe play in their minds. They've tracked these numbers for years enough to feel comfortable about it. But the other kinds, yeah, I mean, it's kind of hit or miss. But I kind of take everything. Worst case scenario, you can always pick up a carrier and make it an as-earned carrier, right? And maybe that's your debit credit card business, which it would be as-earned anyway. So that's kind of the other thing is like, it's going to be as earned anyway if it's a debit credit card, with the exception of Direct Express with Prosperity. So it's like you got nothing to lose from an advance standpoint. Along the same lines, what are some other similar cards financial institutions like the ones I mentioned we need to worry about? Rush Card, possibly Chime Card to the mix there. That's kind of the extent of them. NetSpin, I didn't see that. Those are kind of the other ones. Hey, Matt Tab, how you doing? What would you suggest an agent as a call center and agents who can generate a qualified lead and transfer it live to licensed agent? What kind of raw data or leads should they buy? I don't know. Well, what a lot of guys will do is they'll buy kind of survey leads that are really cheap to acquire, and then just basically call on those. I don't really have a ton of information on that side of the business, kind of outside of my knowledge zone. How much percent do I have the salesman? I don't know what you mean by that. If you could clarify, please. Just clarify that for me if you don't mind to know. Bob, well, how many times have you been stung with chargebacks from rogue agent? Is this common occurrence? I've been blessed and thankful that the people that I recruit generally are honest, hardworking men and women. But I've certainly, like any agency in this business long enough, have had its fair share of people who screw them. One of the things I do now, when I onboard agents, there's a disclosure that basically tells them we're going to go after you if you don't pay off your chargebacks. If you leave this with us, we're going to go after you, and we're going to pursue you legally. And I give a couple of examples where there's one particular agent, this wasn't mine per se, it was in my network of agencies I'm affiliated with. He run so many chargebacks, just flat out white collar crime. We got him, or the associated agency got him they got press charges against the guy. And I don't know if he's still in jail, but he went to the Department of Illinois Corrections. So he's somewhere in Illinois in a federal pen, or at least a state pen, for 8 years. And he has to pay restitution for the hundreds of thousands he stole. There is another agent that I mentioned who we got him to remove his license because he was fraudulently taking applications on clients that under HealthWise had no reason to do it, got it all notarized, and got rid of the guy. He's not in business anymore. Doesn't have a license. And we're working on pursuing another guy that basically did the same kind of white collar crime as the first guy. Probably the worst I've got hit with is $20,000 in chargebacks. This other one's probably going to be 10 or 15. And I've had a couple of that over the years. And that's a game changer if you're not prepared. This is why I talk about, You guys got to sell first before you start building. Like, nobody talks about the horrors of some one guy who thinks that he's above the law and can steal from you, you know? And these are hard things to weather. And you likely don't have the resources to manage that like you would like to, plus the ability legally, like I have now, to go after these people and make sure we put them away. So for me, my suggestion is, this is why you should sell, and especially if you start recruiting, you need to keep selling, because some people don't honor their obligations, and that's just life, you know? So, but I've heard way worse horror stories. There have been some companies out there that you all know and love and hear about on their YouTube channels that these people get buried with tremendous chargeback debts. I heard one guy come to me say he had a $70,000 chargeback debt from one agent. Another one that had $250,000 in chargeback from one agent. It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's because they're pushing the way they recruit and the people they recruit. They're just not good people. And they don't have a filtering process to stop that from happening. And it's real nasty. So you got to be very, very careful with recruiting. It's kind of why I talk a lot about the Medicare side. If you didn't see that, go see yesterday's call. The Medicare side is totally different. You can build passive income like agency building, but without the severe chargeback risk that really is a risk in this business. Okay. Cat Daddy, who is the best GI in your opinion? AIG for face-to-face is what I like to use. Great Western for telesales. Why? Because they both advance commission. They're guaranteed issue. Gerber does not advance commission. That's pretty much the main reason. We need our advances to pay our bills. You're welcome. Alicia, what credit card do you use to buy FE Elites? FE Leads, you mean? Oh, I don't know. I'm not that guy that knows much about the credit cards and the bonuses and stuff. Don't have guidance for you there. How much do I give the people that sells my insurance policy? How much should I start with to start an insurance company? Okay, if you're going to start selling insurance, I would want $3,000 to $5,000 if you're using a model like Final Expense. Whether that's credit or cash on hand, it's your discretion. But you got to have working capital. You know, most businesses fail because they run out of cash. Okay, and in this business, it's cash intensive. You're buying leads, creating sales, making commissions, reinvesting a portion back into leads continuously, right? But you got to have enough to start with. I started with a $4,000 credit line with my last 5th out of 5 credit cards, and that's how I started. Sold a gold coin or two. Do you use credit cards with mileage? Yeah, you could do that. Again, you're poking the bear there. You know, credit is a bad thing, I think, in some cases, right? Because you tend to accumulate fees and interest, and if you're not disciplined and paying it off every month, it's kind of it's a millstone around your neck, right? You just got to be very careful if you're going to go that route. But it's right for some. Okay, let's keep going here. So bottom line, what we're looking at, what if you don't have money? Since we're talking about leads, what if you're broke? What if you don't have money? What can you do in this business? I like seminar marketing. We teach a course. You can buy it from us, daviddufour.com/store, or you can get it for free when you join. That teaches you how to do seminars at senior living facilities to cultivate your own leads for next to no price. And you sell a couple of policies typically at each seminar. And since there's very little investment in hosting these things, you make a high ROI. It's a great way to build a war chest, a bankroll, so you can reinvest that back into leads. That's a much a short-term solution we do to help people build that cash on hand that's necessary to invest in leads. We also teach agents how to self-generate leads either through friends and family sales or their existing network. It's nothing we require. My agency is absolutely not about badgering your friends and family to buy insurance, but we do teach the methodology for people who are comfortable with it and maybe tight on cash and looking for easy wins. And people in your network, even though you might think, oh, I don't want to sell them another, bar of soap or whatever, right? It's different with insurance. People like doing business with people they like and trust. And if you approach it the right way, like what we teach, you're not going to never get a phone call from them ever again if they say no, right? It's not a pushy process, but you'll cultivate and find deals, and it's great because it'll start you in the business, fund yourself, and get you up and running. Do you have to buy leads weekly? Another question I get asked a lot. No, yes, you do. You have to buy leads weekly. Does the restaurant buy ingredients weekly? Yeah. Does a restaurant pay its staff weekly? Yeah, if it wants to be in business, it does. And likewise, that's how the final expense business is. You got to invest in your cost of doing business every week if you want people to talk to. And last but not least, what are the best sources of leads before we get into net income and activity numbers and so on? For face-to-face, it's still direct mail leads. I believe that is the best source of leads. Another option are Facebook leads. For telesales, either a digital lead that you call on outbound or an inbound lead, either transferred live from a call center that's cultivated that lead or some sort of TV lead, okay? And like I said, net income here, bottom line, for us, what we're looking at, goal of 3-to-1 to 4-to-1 is kind of the preferred goal. That's going to make this business lucrative enough, and it's enough with enough ROI with cushion to scale at a higher level and see success. Moving on, activity numbers. Let's talk a little bit about activity, right? Because we can talk about leads and ROI and commission potential, but you have to understand what is the determinant or the accelerant to all that. What starts the process of that is your ability to make phone calls, get in front of people, door knocking, or set appointments if you're face-to-face. You're not going to arrive at any of these numbers we've talked about without the commensurate level of activity required to see the type of success that you're looking for. So what kind of activity should you be thinking about? What kind of activity is necessary? First of all, if you're a face-to-face agent, you absolutely have to be door knocking your leads and calling them and setting appointments. Either both of those at the same time or just exclusively door knocking. I would not get into the final expense business and just call to set appointments to see them face-to-face. You have to door knock your leads. Some people never pick up the phone. The only way to see them is in person, and many of those people will buy because you're the only person that has the guts to show up. So you got to do both of those to maximize the opportunity to hit the numbers we just showed earlier. Now, how many door knocks should you do today? How many calls should you do a day? Maybe I'm just too simplistic in my thinking. Maybe I'm too big picture, but here's how I would address this. From sunrise to sunset, you only have one job, and that's seeing the people. There is nothing more important in your life as a final expense salesperson, selling over the phone or in person, than seeing the people. What do I mean by seeing the people? It's doing the basic legwork and activity to find people who are interested in what you are buying or selling. That means picking up the phone. That means knocking on the door. That means conducting sales presentations. That means getting and being tenacious, relentless, and getting in front of people. In other words, from sunrise to sunset, anything that you do that falls outside of that primary directive is not what you should be doing. Is that 20 calls a day? Is that 200 calls a day? Man, it's going to depend. Maybe every one of those calls picks up and it's a full appointment. Maybe every door knock you do, people are happy to have you in, and each call is an hour and a half long. You might not do a lot. But the more important thing is, are you spending every second of your time in a profit-driven manner that gets you in front of prospects to sell them a final expense plan? If you can do that from sunrise to sunset, every working day you're in the field, then you're doing everything possible to make this business a success, okay? It's when you stop doing that or half-ass it, or you go to a movie midday, or you go out to lunch every day for 2 hours, you're starting to chip away at the fundamentals of what drives your business success. In other words, pack your lunch, eat while you drive between appointments. Don't take prolonged breaks. You don't have a job, you have a business now. You have to be completely and utterly committed to it. And if you can do that process consistently, months if not years on end, the numbers will work itself out. You'll probably be a success, okay? And in reality, it does matter. I mean, I remember an agent a couple months ago, Chris, he called 495 times, triple dialed 495 times over the course of 2.5 days and made it no sales whatsoever. Talked to some people, not interested. At that point, I'm about ready to jump off the ledge. 500 calls almost, no sales. That's crazy. Well, on the 496th call, he made $2,000 sale. On the 497th call, he made like an $800 sale. His total commission up front was like $2,000. But it took 495 calls to get to those 2 calls that paid that. And at the end of 3 days, making $2,000 pocketed up front is pretty damn good in any business, especially final expense. So what's the moral of the story? There's no algorithm here that will predictably every single time tell you exactly what to expect. from call to call, from door knock to door knock, it's a randomized experience. You don't know who's behind that phone. You don't know who's behind that door. But the culmination of attempts over time, over days and weeks, you start to arrive at averages, numbers, ratios that more and more become predictable. I know that after I've done weeks of door knocking, 1 out of 4 people see me. And I know that out of the people I see, 1 out of 2 buy. So if I do 8 door knocks a day, I'm going to sell 2 policies, right? Or 1 policy. So if a policy is $1,000 in commission, and I knock on 8 doors to get that $1,000, every door knock is worth $125. 8 divided by 1,000. That kind of helps you get some perspective on the value of the activity you do. Of course, you got to do the activity to kind of find out what your numbers are. But the moral and the foundation behind your activity is you have to be wholly and utterly committed every second of the day to make this thing happen. Even if you're part-time. Part-time is just a full-time business on a part-time schedule. You have to have that mindset. I'm fully committed to this, right? Even though you don't have all the time in the world. But hopefully that makes sense from a big perspective level of how you should be thinking every step in the business. I used to take a leak at the client's home. I didn't like to stop at the gas station. It would take too much time to go in or find a gas station, use the restroom. Time is money, right? I was doing all sorts of things like that because I wanted more. I knew I was in a race against the clock to get in front of clients because there's not an unlimited time during the day. Maybe some other agent gets there 30 minutes for me. It happens, right? I don't want that to happen. I want to be the guy there, right? So you got to have that mentality. Now, a couple of questions from the chat, and then we'll kind of put it all together and talk about ways to enhance your margins in this business. Let's see here. Cat Daddy, I've had sits where after doing a review of their current coverage, I cannot offer a better deal and they weren't looking to add on. What's your recommendation on handling that? Well, this is where, as an intermediate level agent, you need to be looking at offering other policies like Medicare Advantage, hospital indemnity plans, that kind of thing. There are a ton of opportunities where maybe you missed the final expense sale that you can pick up the Medicare sale. More on that in a second. How many leads to keep busy on the phone for a full 40 to 50 hour work week? Good question, Aubrey. For me, it's 100 Facebook leads a week, at least a minimum. Now, as a new agent, maybe start with less, like half, but gradually work up to 100 plus leads a week. I know agents that do 150 a week, right? So in the telesales world, it's more of a numbers game. You just have to have a good enough lead. There's no telesales lead that's like unbelievably awesome. They're all kind of like, eh. So you make up for it with mass volume of so that you give yourself maximized opportunity exposure. So for me, 100 leads in our agency will result in 5 to 7 sales depending on the skill set of the agent and the amount of time they put into it. That's the goal, at least. Nothing more dissatisfying than giving away its free life insurance review. Well, get over it, Kat. Welcome to the insurance business. The paradox of this business is you're going to hear no more than you're going to hear yes. But that's true for the experienced, successful agents. The reality of it is that the yeses are way more valuable than the losses accrued from a no if you just look at it in monetary terms. Yeah, it hurts your ego a little bit, but one of the things, if you're doing enough activity, you'll hear enough yeses that the no's don't matter, and your bank account reflects that, and you don't really care anyway. So that's why I like to say all sales woes culminate from a lack of prospecting. If you can do 15 to 20 appointments a week, ladies and gentlemen, you won't care about the no's because you're going to see enough yeses to make this business fun and lucrative. Hey, Bob, with all the spam calls causing people to not answer the phone, is it time to get away from preset appointments altogether or do nothing but door knocks? I don't know. There's plenty of agents that work with me that do well on the phone. It's never going to be like so bad that nobody ever picks up the phone ever again. Is it going to get worse? Maybe, possibly. I do agree, though, that door knocking probably is better than it has been ever. Some people just don't like going in person. They want to do telesales, which is fine. That means a person who shows up and creates that, in-person connection is going to have a lot better chance. And people generally answer the door, if you're not looking like a creep or something, right? So, yeah, no, I agree with you to a certain extent. Brandon, the time game and a numbers game, 100%. Thank you, Aubrey. Appreciate it. Show the world. Yeah, it's 100%, man. Okay, cool. So let's put it all together here, wrapping it up here. And thanks for the questions. Keep them coming here. I'll definitely answer them as we wrap it up. So the last thing I want to mention here is kind of how does this all work out? So first of all, the average premium we have at the Ford Insurance Group with the way we do sales is $800 premium, give or take. Some write more, some write less. Commission level, we're just going to use 100% here. Some of our agents will make more than that, depending on their skill set. Obviously, sometimes they're at GI or guaranteed issue, it's less, so an average of 100%. Let's take off 20% of that business just to account for potential for chargebacks. And let's say we have an investment of $1,000 a week in leads. That should give us approximately 5 policies. Again, I'm being generally fair here. I think that's a reasonable, challenging, but achievable goal. So 800 AP, right, times 100%, that's $800 per sale, and first-year commissions times 5 policies is $4,000 in first-year commissions. We take off 20% of that for the expectation of chargebacks, which realizes a $3,200, I would call net revenue, right? That's pretty much accounting for chargebacks. We then take the 75% advance off of the 4,000. It really should be 32,000. It should be a little less. Probably going to be 2,200 or so, 2,100. That's going to be your cash flow. Okay, rough math there. You guys can correct me if that's not right. Probably is. It's pretty close. And then your expenses are going to be $1,000 a week. And then if you extract that from a cash flow revenue, you should end up somewhere between a cash flow revenue of cash flow net income of somewhere around $1,000 to $1,200 or $1,300, depending on the math there, for each week that you're writing $4,000 in business and paying $1,000 in leads. And then, of course, there's the unrealized portion, which is going to be closer to $2,400 or $2,500 in net income. Again, that back 25% that you don't earn until months 10, 11, 12. So that's a rough, conservative, but achievable estimate. Again, some guys and gals kill it. Numbers way better than that. Some people's are worse than that, and they don't make it, right? But this is kind of where I'd want you to set as a primary goal as a final expense agent. Somewhere between $1,000 to $1,500 net income based off of this investment. So how do we make this look better? How do we make this a better outcome? I mean, right now at this setup, if you count the back 25%, you're going to be earning somewhere close to $100,000 a year, which is pretty good. But how can we make this better? So there's a couple ways, of course, that if you improve your skill set or improve your product offerings, that you can get more money out of your business efforts. So a couple of things to think about. And these, again, this is not what I would do, some of these tactics right away. It's more of like, in some cases, an intermediate style thing you should do. Like once you're comfortable with the business, start adding in more products we'll get to in a second. But one thing you can always do is increase the average case size. So let's say instead of $800 in AP, you can, through the process of selling the premium, selling the importance of inflation, showing the prices at the end of the sale where you show a bump up higher than their budget. These are all techniques that we teach. You get $100 average higher per case. Well, if you write 200 policies a year, $100 more at 100%, $100 net income, times 200 policies is $20,000 in net income extra year, just by changing a few things in your sales presentation or improving a few things in your presentation. Again, this is a very real way to make more money without added expense. One of the things that we implemented is what we call selling the premium, really building the importance of appreciating how inflation causes everything to go up and why they therefore need to buy more. And these two techniques have taken our average premiums from where I was at about 550 premiums, say in 2017. Our average premiums, like I said, are 800 or 900. So from 550 to 800 is a 350, right? Yeah, a $250 average net income increase. So what I'm saying is if the average agent who did what I used to teach, but now does what we do now, that's a $250 times 200 cases. It's a $50,000 net income increase in this example. So these are things you can do without changing anything about your leads or investing any more money to milk more money out of the deal. And yes, you can do all this without pissing your client off and make it seem like you're trying to just extract out. There are techniques we do to build the need, to build the value, but without sacrificing the integrity we built with the client. What if you reduce chargebacks, right? So ways that you can reduce chargebacks, you can sell better, right? You sell more to the need of the client. You don't push it all. Maybe you sell more competitive products. Maybe we save 15 policies a year at 900 AP, and that yields us $13,500 in extra net income. So my point is, again, one way we can look at improving this business model even more is selling better and having better product selection to improve the amount of people that don't actually lapse because they found a better deal elsewhere. They just couldn't afford it, right? So this is very much something you can do to improve your ratios. Another strategy, what if you just write an extra policy a week, right? You sell 45 weeks out of the year. That's 45 more policies times 900. If you just can figure out through proper sales training and analysis and critique of what it is that you do to sell, if you can squeeze one more policy a week out of it, that's $40,000 plus more in net income without changing any investment in your business. See, my point in saying all this, there's all sorts of opportunities to improve based off of a conservative yet achievable metric on the basics of the business. And the last but not least, of course, is what if you cross-sell Medicare? We mentioned this earlier. How do we get more money out of this business? So maybe it's not just necessarily selling a bigger and better policy that sticks better with final expense. Maybe it's offering them Medicare. That's what we teach too at DeFord Insurance Group. If all you sell is 100 Medicare Advantage policies, which guys, if you're running 15 appointments a week in the final expense space, that business is just waiting to be had. You should be able to easily sell 100 Medicare Advantage plans a year. That's $30,000 plus in passive income for life. And if you just do 100 plans a year on this kind of production with no difference whatsoever, that's 500 policies, and there's going to be some fall off. So maybe it's 120 to 150,000 in recurring annual income for life, just by adding in another product line and working that amongst your leads. The moral of the story here, ladies and gentlemen, is again to show you and show you the big picture, to think bigger about what the opportunity of final expense is. Final expense is one of the best products to get into the insurance business with. It's simple to learn, the payout's very good, and it's a numbers-driven business on a one-call close basis. And there's tons of prospects if you know where to get your leads and know who to train with. And that's what we do, and that's why I'm a big advocate of final expense and getting into this business to start with. And then from there, building into other business models like Medicare, for example, to where you can start to build a passive stream of income and realize money without having to necessarily go work as hard as you had been to get the final expense business, or build a business in the agency side like I did. So that's the numbers behind the business. Hopefully this gives you some perspective on how commission works, how lead costs work, what a good ROI potential is, what the numbers realistically are, and how you can improve them with different technique changes and different product offerings. If you guys got any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or the comment box to expand on any of this. If you'd like to learn more about joining my agency, again, davidduford.com/FAQ. You are welcome to check that out to learn about how final expense works with us to see if it's a good fit. Okay. Now we're going to go to the chat. So if you're live here, throw some questions out, I'll answer them. Aubrey, have you gone over or can you go over how the residual income for final expense works? Yeah, real quick. It ain't that good. It's usually just a couple of bucks for 5 to 10 years, depending on the carrier. This is why we talk about, and why many agencies in the MLM space talk about agency building. Or like in my space, I'm not in the MLM space. I'm not recruiting you to recruit other people. That's why I talk about Medicare, because we all kind of agree here that passive residual income is pretty cool to get paid on stuff that you're not necessarily having to go out and work for because you paved the way years ago. And agency building does it, right? It's semi-passive. You got to train your agents. You got to answer the phone calls, right? It's not just free money that you just get. You got to earn the right to get it, of course. And it's Medicare sales, kind of in the same vein. And what you got to decide is, are you the type that wants to build, deal with agents, train with agents, help them along, or do you prefer to stay in sales and instead of going the building route to go the Medicare route? Again, I think the average agent is far off better building a Medicare book of business to realize passive income than agency building, only for the reason that agency building has much more existential threat with chargebacks. It's a different skill set training people and dealing with people than it is selling prospects. And most people not all people who are good at sales are good at management. Some of you guys probably know this from earlier experiences in other sales businesses. Sometimes the best salespeople are the worst managers. So it's not as clear cut to go to building as people make it out to be. How much do you save for income taxes? It's going to depend on what your earnings are. I think a safe number is going to be 1/4 of your net income. Okay. Remember, deduct everything that you can. Uncle Sam allows you to deduct your cost of doing business. Deduct those lead costs, please. Deduct those mileage costs, please. Right? The one difficult thing about insurance sales is it's a large income-driven business, but there's very little room for deductions beyond what I've described or putting your money in a SEP, IRA, or something. If you could only sell one product, would you sell final expense or Medicare? Medicare for me. Why am I sitting here talking about final expense then if I love Medicare that much and do that? Because most of y'all can't start with Medicare because it's not going to make you enough money up front for the first year or so. It is a long-term strategy. So what we generally do is do final expense to start to get a cash flow going, and then to build a block of future business to go back to our clients to sell Medicare Advantage to, then integrate Medicare in over the second year to where it starts taking up more and more of our time. I did a video kind of describing this 5-year plan, how to build a $500,000 passive income yearly in 5 years or less. If you guys go to davidduford.com/YT, like YouTube, YT, davidduford.com/YT, then you can watch that video. There's nothing to buy, but it kind of details this process, this business plan to get to that point. What is the most AP in 1 year you've seen an agent produce single-handedly? I know one agent that did $700,000 in 9 months, strictly in final expense. Ryan Lodi. That video's up. If it was released in January, it's got like the red eyes. You'll see it if you look for it in January. That's a really good read. And the kid's like 22, 23. I call him a kid, but he's the man. There's another agent, Anthony Martin. Some of you have seen that. That's the guy who has the website that generates leads. Dude does $1 million plus a year, no doubt. And he writes a lot of it. We're actually supposed to film a second installment to that video Friday, so it'll be out next week or so. It's good, though. A good agent, though, to me, is anybody who writes $150,000 to $200,000 in annual premium a year, right? Everybody has hot years, and there's always the people who are like 2 standard deviations from the norm that are just outliers. But what impresses me a lot in this business is a guy who can go out there for 5 or 10 years and write $10,000 to $15,000 a month consistently. There's a lot of people who will be hot a year or two and then fade into oblivion, right? And they had their time in the sun, but there is, I think, they don't get as much fanfare, but I have a special appreciation for the person to go out there and crush it, maybe not in a huge way, but consistently for years on end. That's pretty impressive to me, too. Does DeFord Insurance Group also provide P&C services? No, just life and health. I mean, final expense, Medicare, annuities, and ACA. P&C is just more complicated to recruit nationally, too, so that's kind of why we've stayed out of it. Hey, Brandon, I know most agency will not admit it, but do a lot of them upcharge their agents on leads? 100%, man. There's a well-known agency that most of you probably have looked at that buys leads for pennies on the dollar and then resells them multiple times for $8 to $10 to different agents in their agency. Why do they do that? Because they make millions of dollars on it. It's a great profit source for them. And yeah, some agents do sell them and make some sales off of them. But at the end of the day, it is a strategy that is extremely lucrative to the agency. And the problem, of course, is there's a dissonance between what you want as an agent. You want to make sales. And you want to buy the good leads, the best leads that result to sales. But there's a dissonance between you and the agency in question because they're just trying to make money. And there's multiple ways they can make money. They can sell you crap and then upcharge it through the roof, or they can make money from the sale of policies. But what we have here is a tremendous dissonance. And it costs agents their career in many cases. They leave the business with a chip on their shoulder, understandably thinking it's a racket that basically just sell leads, and they're 100% right. I don't do that. I don't make a dime off of the leads that I recommend. I only make money when you make a sale, and that's intentional. I could be in the same game a lot of these agencies do, which is offer some garbage leads and upsell them and tell you how they're great and make money from that, but that's not how I roll. I want to have the same alignment and goals that you do so that we can both win, and we only win when we both win. When you win, I win. I don't want it to be where I sell you some crap and I win, but you don't. You lose. That's a bad deal. Welcome, Aubrey. How are the chargebacks for solo sales, even when you're a good salesperson? Kind of mentioned that just a second ago, right? 15 to 20%. So if you write 200 policies, you'll keep 160 to 175. That's kind of what I would say. It's going to depend on the agent. Some people are way better than that, but that's conservative but achievable. Thanks, Brad. Cat Daddy, also, I agree with what you said about getting over it and pivoting. Yep. If we can't sell MAPD yet, then what are the best tertiary options? I would say start studying and get MAP done ASAP. If you're at the point where you feel comfortable cross-selling, then what I would do is pick up Medicare Advantage. It's literally the best product to sell. So why wouldn't you do it? You can do AHIP in a week or two, Cat Daddy. You can contract with the carrier or two, and you should be ready to sell middle of August. I mean, if you know you need to cross-sell, just cross-sell the thing that you know you should sell, right? Not that hospital indemnity is bad. It's a better sell to couple with Medicare because it covers the gap in Medicare is how I would kind of describe it, or Medicare Advantage plan. So if you sell that, it's easier to sell with it, right? Just do Medicare. Rocket, do you suggest a general insurance business name or a niche name, like DeFord Final Expense? To your clients, they don't care, okay? What they care about is David DeFord, your life insurance agent. You're the brand of your agency. The name of your agency doesn't matter, okay? Now, for me, I named my agency DeFord Insurance Group because I sell different products now. It used to be Final Expense Agent Mentor back in the day because I just did Final Expense, but we expanded products and I wanted there to be a little brand change that I wasn't pigeonholed to just Final Expense. So I made the change to DeFord Insurance Group because my brand is not attracting prospects to sell policies. It's attracting people to partner with me to sell insurance, right? So that's a different arrangement. Yes, you should have a brand there. Of course, I always thought putting your name in the brand kind of gives the signal that it's a personal business. It's not some corporate entity with some weird name like Google, right, or Calendly. You know, DeFord Insurance Group sounds like a person's last name. Hopefully it does. And the personal elements is very important with my business, right? It's not just another corporate behemoth that doesn't care, right? But I would just use your name. My business cards always used to say David DeFord, your life insurance agent, and then have a professional mugshot on the left, right? So that's all you need. You can name it if you want to. I'm not saying you can or shouldn't, but it's just not necessary. Can you do your own retention for final expense cancellations? You should. If anybody cancels on me, I just call them up and say, hey, Mrs. Jones, I saw that we tried to take your premium, but it didn't go through. What's going on? I'm not accusatory. I'm not angry. Half the time it's just a mistake. The client didn't know. You know, they just had to bail out their grandson from jail, right? And overdrawn or something. Stuff happens, right? And you just rewrite the deal with another policy or catch the premiums up. But do follow up on those people that cancel. It's just easy to do, and you'll save a lot of business. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed today's training, got some value out of it, kind of know more about the final expense business. If I can help in any way, you know what to do. Leave a comment below. If you're watching the recording, I'll answer it personally. Or go to daviddeford.com. Click the button that says Become an Agent if you'd like to learn more about becoming an agent and how to join my agency to sell final expense face-to-face, over the phone, part-time or full-time. Thank you so much. Y'all have a good day.